Every single day, more Americans fall into poverty. This should deeply alarm you no matter what political party you belong to and no matter what your personal economic philosophy is. Right now, approximately 100 million Americans are either poor or near poor. For a lot of people, poverty can be a nebulous concept. So let's define it. The poverty levels as defined by the federal government in 2010 was $11,139 for an individual and $22,314 for a family of four. Could you take care of a family of four on less than $2,000 a month? Millions upon millions of families are experiencing a tremendous amount of pain in this economy, and no matter what solutions we think are correct, the reality is that we all should have compassion on them. Sadly, things are about to get even worse. The next major economic downturn is rapidly approaching, and when it hits, the statistics posted below are going to look even more horrendous. When it comes to poverty, most Americans immediately want to get into debates about tax rates and wealth redistribution and things like that. But the truth is that they are missing the main point. The way we slice up the pie is not going to solve our problem because the pie is constantly getting smaller. Our economic infrastructure is being absolutely gutted. The United States dollar is slowly losing its status as the reserve currency of the world, and we are steadily getting poor as a nation. Don't be fooled by the government statistics that show a very small amount of economic growth. Those figures do not account for inflation. After accounting for inflation, our economic growth has actually been negative all the way back into the middle of the last decade. According to numbers compiled by John Williams of Shadowstats.com, our real GDP has continually been negative since 2005. So that means we're getting poorer as a nation. Meanwhile, we have been piling up astounding amounts of debt. 40 years ago, the total amount of debt in the United States was less than $2 trillion. Today, it is nearly $55 trillion. So we have a massive problem. Our economic pie is shrinking and millions of Americans have been falling out of the middle class. Meanwhile, we have been piling up staggering amounts of debt in order to maintain our vastly inflated standard of living. As our economic problem gets even worse, those trends are going to accelerate even more. So don't look down on the poor. You might be joining them a lot sooner than you might think. The following are 40 facts about poverty in America that will blow your mind. Hi, I'm going to cover just 11 of the facts in this video, but we'll put a link to the article so that you can read the rest of them if you so desire. But before I do, I want to reemphasize something I said in a previous video I did entitled Economic Indicator, Housing Market, where I talked about how and why the housing market is a better economic indicator than the stock market. The most recent report on the housing market is bleak, which supports what the author is saying in this article for this video about the economy getting worse and not better. Sales of newly built homes fell hard in June despite newfound optimism in the housing recovery, especially among the home builders themselves. Signed contracts to buy new homes fell 8.4% from the previous month, according to the U.S. Commerce Department, although they are still up 15% from a year ago. Sales levels are now at their lowest since January. Now, let's take a look at the first 11 facts about poverty in America. Number one, in the United States today, somewhere around 100 million Americans are considered to be either poor or near poor. Two, it has been projected that when the final numbers come out later this year, that the United States poverty rate will be the highest that it has been in almost 50 years. 3. Approximately 57% of all children in the United States are living in homes that are either considered to be either low income or impoverished. 4. Today, 1 out of every 4 workers in the United States brings home wages that are at or below the poverty level. 5. According to the Wall Street Journal, 49.1% of all Americans live in a home where at least one person receives financial benefits from the government. Back in 1983, that number was below 30%. 6. It is projected that about half of all American adults will spend at least some time living below the poverty line before they turn 65. 7. Today, there are approximately 20.2 million Americans that spend more than half of their incomes on housing. That represents a 46% increase from 2001. 8. During 2010, 2.6 million more Americans fell into poverty. That was the largest increase that we have seen since the U.S. government began keeping statistics on this back in 1959. 9. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the percentage of very poor rose in 300 out of the 360 largest metropolitan areas during 2010. 10. Since Barack Obama became president, the number of Americans living in poverty has risen by 6 million and the number of Americans on food stamps has risen by 14 million. 11. Right now, 1 out of every 7 Americans is on food stamps, and 1 out of every 4 American children is on food stamps.
Thanks for watching Kingdom Knowledge News.